Another detail of mine, yes, but videos coming soon. I can't quite put into words how I felt when this happened. Maybe it was what felt like endless auditory silence, coupled with the serene simplicity of the snow-ridden world. It may have been respite, lying in the snow, and for one moment it all stopped. The show intentionally gave us room to breathe. Maybe it was the explosiveness with which it happened, impulsive and anti-theistic to the previous calm. The storm after the silence? It could have been the carnal, reflexive way. Kano didn't really think about the rules of engagement, didn't think about where the line of the common opinion was between being roommates and being free. It just felt right for her in that moment. It could have been the immediate sense of regret, overshadowed first by a carefully crafted facade of amicability, and then an immediate race to crowded safety, to distraction. Or it was my own sense of foreboding that immediately swept over me in a million different senses and feelings and words and thoughts. Holy shit, lesbian? Is she at least bi or even lesbian? Jesus, are they trying to break new grounds? This depiction isn't comical nor fetishistic, and it's in a show not labeled Yuri. Is this series gonna evolve not into just covering the coming of age of the cast, but also deal with societal issues? For real this time? It all made sense. If Khan realized and spoke about her feelings for a fellow band member of the Sunflower Dolls, met by the disgust of centuries of imbued homophobia, maybe that's why she fell off. That's why she punched someone in her group. Maybe it all came together. But wait. Why did I say, is this series gonna evolve not into just covering the coming of age of the cast, but also deal with societal issues? For real this time? That's when I realized that in the dead core of my being, my soul a fire-emitting cigarette smoke, the light was lit by a disappointment so big, the hope for remedy by Jellyfish Can't Swim in the Night became almost cosmic. I realized something. I hoped that Jellyfish Can Swim in the Night might do what Wonder Egg Priority didn't. But why is it didn't and not couldn't? Wonder Egg Priority was, at its time, a real novelty. The animation looked great, it featured an all-female cast, but seemed to both tonally and visually take more inspiration from the likes of Madoka Magica, coupled with the aesthetic sensibilities of a Kyoto animation. It also made a crucial promise to speak on society, explicitly through the lens and experiences of a female cast, some relating to virtually everyone, some sadly far more often experienced by people at least perceived as girls. We'll get to him. And, well, it featured such gems as
女だからその時その時で感情は爆発するだろ。気合が足りなくて根性がなくてブスでおどおどしてて全部何もかもだからこのかまってちゃん。
うん、男子と女子の自殺は意味合いが違うからね。男は目的脳、女は感情脳。
女は衝動的で他人の声に影響されやすいからね。
Adding to that, it had the audacity to show or state a rape as the reason for suicide 3 billion times every episode, often going so far as to make the victim, even in death, relive their trauma for the sake of the narrative or the sake of the main cast's girl's development.
なんだこいつ。剣道部の顧問だよ。相談に乗ってもらってたんだ。いい先生だと思ってたんだ。でも合宿所で押し倒されて、僕妊娠したんだ。赤ちゃんには申し訳なかったけど、僕
Which is, personally speaking and analytically to say, beyond just showing the disgusting prevalence of rape and sexual assault against women through the medium of art, and devolves into just torture porn. Nay, even worse, trauma porn. I'm already anticipating the lol, you're reading too much into that. Bro just has a running nose. That definitely isn't pre-cum. Which, this depiction itself is disgusting from what we're told about the girl Kaoru was. We'll get to that. But, okay, for the sake of entertaining the lol curtains blue argument, giving the benefit of the doubt that whoever may feel like typing that response isn't consciously or unconsciously engaging in rape apology, let's look at a few examples of this artist's previous work, shall we? Nojima Shinji, director of One Like Priority, started his career with the show 101st Proposal, which is more or less unremarkable, but he quickly learned the lesson that if you're not willing to improve your craft or be conservative about your standing in the TV show scene, you gotta be shocking. And shocking he will be. Because his next show, High School Teacher, which you already know where this is going, featured a romance between a high school teacher and a student of his. And also, I lied. You don't know where this is going. It's comically worse. High School Teacher is actually a show about a romance between a high school teacher and his student, but also about homosexuality, which isn't bad, but it comes alongside of rape, incest, teen pregnancy, and suicide. Now, all these aren't bad in concept, at the latest since Lolita was published as a horror novel and then got turned into a movie where a grown man could fantasize about and ogle at a teenage girl. We know that people will and art is or should be allowed to do anything. That is, if it's being shown adequately. That is to say, respectfully and truthfully. You need to do your research to give these topics depiction both realism, credence, and the appropriate amount of respect. Say, a film a la Silenced, the 2011 movie about the systemic abuse against disabled kids and how methods of empowering them were undercut by ignorance and prejudice, which is set in Korea. Or you could wing it, throw darts at the wall of horrible things that can happen to someone in a show, and, crucially, grotesquely, in real life, until something sticks, and then just run with it, disgusting the ones that suffered similar traumas and misinforming others that just happened to tune in. Like, to make an adequate comparison, watch Explanation Point's video on the show Magical Girl Side, whose author did exactly that. It's called How to Suffer Well, Sympathetic Characterization in Madoka Magica and Magical Girl Side. which you can find in this vid's desk. And in a film called High School Teacher, a movie about the romance of a high school teacher and a student, which route do you think Nojima took? Other masterpieces of him include Without Family, probably the most disgustingly titled film of his, about parental abuse, a kid burning its house to kill her abusive father, subsequent homelessness of the child, abuse outdoors at the hands of the homelessness and the system, and her mom dying. Or what about Minors, a movie about disaffected minors getting brutalized by gangs and the police? And then there's Mom Won't Be Here Tomorrow, a show in which a girl gets orphaned and then suffers abuse in the orphanage. The point hasn't quite been made, it's overbaked and turned to charcoal at this point. With this, the weird sexist interjections and throw-up inducing rape allegories, every single episode beyond the first become so much worse and so much clearer in their lack of depth. Like, what in the ever-loving fuck does it mean that men are goal-oriented in their suicides and women are emotion-oriented? Like what? Do men do a statistical evaluation of their life, decide it will not be great by a margin of 2%, and then submit a letter to whatever agency to inform them that, as of this suicide, they won't be able to pay their taxes anymore? Are women just casually deciding after tripping on the third floor of a parking lot that life just isn't it for them? And what the flip are we to do with Kaoru in all this? First of all, why in shit is he here? The eggs are supposed to only house women. He is a man. And account and private account should know this. They created a life form from scratch. This is Nojima reaching out from the real world to distort the show's rules and the rules of reality in what simultaneously is the single dumbest piece of transphobia I've seen till now, and also breaks everything for the single most disgusting reason, which follows now. Because, wait a minute, discarding the why is he here question, I really feel bad for saying it like this, but I'm just so angry. It's so vile, not just towards trans people. What was the reason for his suicide? Because by the show, his suicide must have been carefully planned, and he may have submitted a revolutionary paper on the ethics of the right to die. But like both the show and I think it was actually because... oh god. He is trans, told a person he trusted more than his parents about it. That person not only betrayed his trust, but didn't even acknowledge him, raped him and got him pregnant with an unwanted child, which in the future would have added the trauma of abortion, miscarriage, or childbirth with it. And I just don't think he could handle that. Obviously and validly so. But by the show's logic, that makes him female, because that suicide was emotion-oriented. I repeat, his suicide confirms his femininity in a way that the person that raped him also did, and chalks up being raped and forcibly impregnated while being discriminated against as emotional, in a jaw-dropping amount of both misogyny and transphobia, and the single worst depiction of an attitude towards rape victims, or victims of any trauma really, that it's quite baffling that many people to this day think the show got bad from episode 8 to 9 onwards, as opposed to being rotten from the very core. But well, shout out at least to the only real egg in the show. And the thing is, I can't fault these people, still considering it an interesting and initially thoughtful experience, because there was something there. Back then, I wanted to do a video about trauma bonding and the general melancholic hopefulness of the show, a vibe that so accurately reflected both my life as well as my stay at various mental institutions, that I was just floored. I wanted One Like Priority to be this. I needed it to be, because I wanted to be seen, heard. But it broke its promise. Or worse, it lied about keeping it from the start. It couldn't be that, because from the beginning, it wasn't. Nonsensical characters like Nehru and I, boring or badly written dialogue that lets the characters interact more as my Captain America figurine inexplicably fighting Darth Vader, a weak or non-existent power or magic system, and perhaps, no, definitely, the single worst societal critique in ages, with no ideas presented for how to fix any of the problems shown in the series, because you see, an evil cyborg robot girl did it all with the help of biblically correct butterflies, and no solution or option being provided on how to work to overcome or live with your trauma being presented. At least none that actually works in real life. Honestly, the only really unequivocally good thing we got from it was Rika. Like, she's so well written and just generally awesome. Like, she's emotionally intelligent and is the only character to ever ask the question, is survivor's guilt a good reason to put your life on the line? Which, if you forgot about that so very important and interesting question from the end of the episode 4, I wouldn't fault you. One Like Priority does the same, because I honestly don't believe Nojima had an answer to that wouldn't just end the show at that point. If you want to get more in depth on the points I only mentioned haphazardly right now, watch the video and big source of this one by Nil Nigeri, One Like Priority, a mesmerizing mess. It's in the description. Like, seriously, they're so concise in their wording and criticism, and much about Nojima I wouldn't have found without it. I loved the music, the tone, and the attempt of One Like Priority. However ill-intended it was from point A. And if you loved it too, well, I got the shit for us both. It's called One Like Priority, My Priority, the sequel, which establishes that Nehru is a robot, and actually, that's why she found it so hard to relate to girlhood. In all seriousness though, Jellyfish Can Swim in the Night caught me off guard. Not in the sense of its beautifully directed, melancholic atmosphere, not in the sense of its impressively animated movement, detail, or delightfully meaningful shot composition, or masterful visual metaphor, but in that single moment when it differentiated itself from being just one more slightly sad group of girls wander to the North Pole and find happiness along the road type of anime, but by being more real and raw than any of those. Quite ironically, the act itself isn't that raw. It is not really meat if you look from afar, but in a medium that is concerned with either not showing homosexuality or only embracing the sexuality part of it, making it look more predatory and dangerous than anything. Such a silent, ambivalent, small gesture as a genuine peck on the cheek lip crossing felt like the weight of the world just crashed down in this slice of their life we're watching. From then on, I was really hooked. I knew about it for longer than that, as Replay Value made a video about its quote, endless potential, but I wasn't quite sure. I was cynical. There's a shit ton of feel-good anime like this that start sad and end happy without addressing anything meaningful in meaningful anythings. I've seen One Like Priority 2 times, but from then on, everything caught my eye. I don't like the manic pixie girl trope that swoops into your life and you agree to start living and it works, but Mahiru or Yoru critically runs away from Kano's proposal of forming an idol group together. And none of the characters are fixed by Kano either, much less her own problems. Kiwi still can confront society even as she grows more confident again and makes friends, and Mahiru grapples in basically every episode with her perceived inferiority and not standing up for her passions. And May is fine. Like, we can now add this to the incredibly small pool of manic pixie subversions at the sights of Welcome to the NHK, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and the Scott Pilgrim remake. It is seriously so refreshing to see an anime that understands that while you have already decided to fight for a better life, a happier future, you're still trapped in the cell you made for yourself, or that others made for you, your idiosyncrasies, your fears, and your trauma. And says, yeah, this is valid, let's go step by step, divide a big problem into a smaller one. Because that's how recovery works. Mahiru is pretty straightforward as far as the psychology and narrative departments are concerned, but specifically Kiwi and Kano have grabbed me by the veins. Kiri is presented as having traditionally boyish interests and personality, boisterous, a hero, and maybe a bit of an ego as a child. She likes monsters and Power Rangers, special attacks, that stuff. But she's not drawn like a tomboy, her physique is small and tender, and she's got long hair. It's an actual honest to Madoka personality, not a trope attached to a character spreadsheet. And society doesn't like this. So she gets ostracized, bullied, and told by her teacher she should grow out of those childish boyish interests and become more girl-like. Her ego turns inwards on itself, an Ouroboros. She now gloats not to impress, but to deflect to her previous, stronger self, so that she doesn't need to reconcile her situation with a more self-actualized past. Critically, she can't admit to herself yet that she is depressed, that she has social anxiety. And simultaneously, she does it to present that past to others, as both a method to return to it, but also to still think of herself, at least in the view of other people, as a success story, a valuable person. And then this scene and subsequent iterations give me the absolute chills.
てめえどこ見ておって可愛いじゃんねえ一人
あ、そういう目で見た。
Not necessarily because of that sad aspect of male-female relationships, but because she specifically says, don't look at me that way. Could she be asexual? This is not so much of a stretch as other people might think, at least not to me. I'm friends with many non-card game related aces, and her distant but really platonically loving nature, as well as meticulous planning and critical thinking skills coupled with her geek interest, if I may say it that way, just remind me so much of those friends I hold dear. That of course isn't to say all Arrow Ace people are like this, just that she feels right up that alley from my outsider's perspective. And I would love that to be true. Because like, we got these three for Arrow Ace people, and that's kinda it. And Kano, well, I already explained most of that at the beginning of this video. And then there's Mei Kim Anouk, which seemed interesting at first. Her name sounds Korean, which is like, holy shit. If they go to Japan-Korea relations, it's fucking over. This show is the best in a decade if it goes well. We're so back if that happens. But for now, well, let's admit it, she's not a character. She doesn't possess any depth. She's comedic relief based on obsessive behavior, which is never questioned as to its healthiness or even encouraged. Oh my god, episode 8 just came out and May accidentally rented a love hotel instead of a normal hotel, and the show doesn't make a big deal out of it. It's just sex. It's just an accommodation. Yoru even seems to know herself around here, a possible hint at female sexuality being what it fucking is. Normal human behavior. And did you notice that in the first episode, Kano is wearing a devil's costume and Yoru an angel's, foreshadowing Kano's self-demonizing on account of her failure as an idol to conform to her mom's wishes and society, and Yoru presenting as an angel to others, not revealing her true passions for fear of ostracization? Could this even be a mockery and setup for subversion of the lesbian as predator trope? Kano being the devil that seduces Yoru, but actually they're just in love? And could we for a second talk about the red lipstick Kano and Yoru put on, and how it reflects the cherry chapstick motif of lesbian culture? Okay, I know. The offer is that anyone can interpret anything they want into a piece of art, but even I think I'm reaching right now. I want it to be genius, almost without flaws, but it won't be. It already isn't. Mei exists, and her slavish devotion to Kano is reinforced by the plot. But all the things about its direction, its composition, tone, and realness are all really there. That isn't my brain on 3 liters of energy drinks self-destructing over a peck on the cheek. I have sincere something like hope for this series, because there's this sliver of greatness, of a good story, of a well-crafted artwork, of a genuine attempt, however flawed or genius, at societal and personal critique, because it has these small moments. They are small, but when something like that kiss happens, or Kiwi not wanting to be defined in a sexual way, or Mahiru definitely flirting with Kano, it's transgressive. It's transgressive in a most subtle, almost etheric way. Almost unseen, but it still breaks moldy norms and right through my left-right brain barrier. It still shows a willingness for this specific time on Earth and its troubles to be reflected in its story. And it shows a great deal of maturity. It needs to become what those transgressions show. And that's why you should watch it, to hope and document it as I will do, and to revisit it and see how it held up. And also because, even if it isn't what I hope it will be, make it out to be, it's still damn good art. And that is precious.